Spoke with Super Bowl winning quarterback Jim McMahon, and he opened up about his own battle, degenerative brain disease, and the effects it's had on other team members as well.
On the field and off, Jim McMahon led the Chicago Bears to their first Super Bowl title in 1985.
That was just an epic moment. When you think back to that team, what comes to mind? We were pretty damn good.
Jim McMahon, the brash quarterback who led the Chicago Bears to their legendary Super Bowl XX victory, became the face of football rebellion with his pure addict lifestyle and self-destructive choices that would eventually overshadow his entire career. Sure, he was talented. He held 55 NCAA offensive records at BYU and threw for over 9,500 yards in college. He won the Davey O'Brien Award and made it to the College Football Hall of Fame. The Chicago Bears drafted him 5th overall in 1982, and he seemed destined for greatness. But here's the thing about Jim McMahon. He wasted almost every opportunity he got because he couldn't stay healthy and he couldn't stay out of trouble. McMahon cultivated this reputation as the nonconformist punky QB. He thought he was so cool and edgy. Before Super Bowl XX, reporters kept asking him about a buttocks injury, so what did he do? He mooned them. Real classy, right? That's the kind of guy McMahon was. He cared more about being a rebel than being a professional. Sure, the Bears won that Super Bowl and McMahon looked like a hero for a moment. He was named NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year in 1982 and made the Pro Bowl in 1985. But his attitude and his reckless playing style set him up for a nightmare that would last the rest of his life. After just 7 years with the Bears, McMahon bounced around to 5 different teams. The San Diego Chargers, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Minnesota Vikings, and others all gave him a chance. Why did he keep moving? Because he kept getting hurt. His body was breaking down because of how he played the game. He suffered a severe rotator cuff injury in 1986 from a controversial hit by Packers defensive lineman Charles Martin. That injury alone should have been a wake-up call, but McMahon just kept going. He admits he had at least 4 concussions during his NFL career. 4 documented ones. Who knows how many he actually had? And those concussions, they destroyed his brain. Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to this channel and drop a comment below. Do you think McMahon's punky QB persona was genuine rebellion, or just an immature act that hurt his career? Let us know what you think. By his early 50s, around age 53, McMahon was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. Think about that. A guy who should have been enjoying retirement was instead losing his mind. He started experiencing severe memory issues and confusion. He described something he called brain fog, and he talked about intense head pain that felt like ice picking on both sides of his brain. He would walk into a room and forget why he was there. Basic stuff that normal people do every day became impossible for him. And whose fault was it? His own. He knew football was dangerous. Every player knows that. But McMahon played with a reckless abandon that made things so much worse. Here's where it gets really ugly. McMahon's chronic pain from all those injuries became unbearable. So what did he do? He turned to drugs. Not just a few pills here and there. We're talking about up to 100 Percocet pills per day. 100. That's not pain management. That's a full-blown addiction. He admitted the pills were doing more harm than good, but he kept taking them anyway. This is the same guy who wanted to be seen as tough and rebellious, but he couldn't handle the consequences of his own choices. The NFL's medical staff kept giving him these addictive opioids to mask his symptoms, instead of actually treating the root problems. And McMahon just went along with it because it was easier than facing reality. Eventually, McMahon did try to get clean. He switched from those 100 daily Percocet pills to smoking marijuana 3 times a day. He uses an indica strain, and he calls cannabis a godsend that relieved his pain and helped him sleep. Good for him, I guess. But here's the problem. He's now out there advocating for cannabis like he's some kind of hero. He co-founded a cannabis brand called Revenant and goes around telling everyone that marijuana saved his life. Maybe it did help him get off the harder drugs, but let's not pretend this guy is a role model. He got himself into this mess in the first place. McMahon's pain got so bad that he once said if he had a gun, he wouldn't be here anymore. That's how desperate things became. And you know what? A lot of that desperation came from decisions he made. He played a violent sport in a violent way. He took drugs without questioning the long-term effects. He ignored warning signs until his body and mind were completely wrecked. Then he wanted sympathy. In 2012, McMahon joined over 4,500 former NFL players in a massive class action lawsuit against the league. They accused the NFL of negligence and intentional misconduct for hiding the link between repetitive head injuries and long-term brain damage like dementia and chronic traumatic encephalopathy. McMahon became one of the faces of this lawsuit. He went public saying that players knew about injuries to every other part of the body, but they didn't know about head trauma. And the league knew, he claimed. That's the whole reason for the lawsuit. McMahon also linked the tragic suicides of his former teammates Dave Duerson and Andre Waters to post-concussion syndrome. Those deaths were absolutely heartbreaking, and it's terrible that the NFL may have hidden important medical information. But here's what bothers me about McMahon's role in all this. He acted like he was some innocent victim. who had no idea football could hurt his brain. Come on. Even back in the 1980s and 1990s, everyone knew getting hit in the head repeatedly wasn't good for you. McMahon chose to play that way. He chose to be the tough guy who didn't care about the risks, and now he wanted to blame everyone else. In 2013, the NFL agreed to a settlement that started at $765 million and was later revised to be uncapped in total payout. The settlement created compensation tiers based on diagnosis. Players with dementia could get up to $3 million. Players with Alzheimer's could get up to $5 million. Sounds great, right? Well, not exactly. The settlement's administration turned into a total disaster. About 28% of claims that were diagnosed by settlement, approved doctors got denied anyway. The administrators kept rejecting claims by saying the cognitive problems were caused by other health conditions like chronic pain, depression, and sleep disorders. But those conditions are directly linked to head trauma. It's a cruel irony. The very symptoms caused by football injuries were being used as reasons to deny compensation. And then there was the race norming scandal. The settlement used a practice that adjusted cognitive test scores based on race. It assumed black players started with lower baseline cognitive function than white players. This racist practice made it much harder for black players to qualify for compensation even when they had clear dementia diagnoses. Prominent black players like Najee Davenport and Kevin Henry were diagnosed with dementia after multiple concussions, but their claims got denied because of race norming. The whole thing was disgusting. The NFL finally agreed to stop using race norming in 2021, but the damage was already done. McMahon, being a white player, didn't face this particular barrier, but the fact that the system he fought for ended up discriminating against the majority of players is just another example of how messed up the whole situation was. The settlement allowed the NFL to avoid a public trial, which meant the league never had to disclose its internal files about what it knew and when it knew it regarding concussion-related brain problems. Lawyers for the players wanted to review the work of the NFL's Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee, which had been accused of publishing studies for decades that downplayed the severity of football-related head injuries. But the settlement let the league keep all that secret. So even though McMahon and thousands of other players got some money, the NFL's institutional reputation stayed protected. The league didn't have to admit wrongdoing. It just wrote a check and moved on. While McMahon was dealing with all this legal drama, he also went down another controversial path. He started seeing an upper cervical chiropractor who told him that his upper neck vertebrae were misaligned and blocking the flow of cerebrospinal fluid in his brain. The chiropractor performed a non-invasive adjustment, and McMahon claims that within 2 minutes, it was like the toilet flushed and he could feel the stuff leaving his brain. He says he experienced improvements in severe headaches, vision problems, slurred speech, and pressure in his skull. Sounds miraculous, right? Well, mainstream medical experts are extremely skeptical. There's a serious lack of rigorous peer-reviewed studies on this type of treatment. Critics say McMahon probably experienced a powerful placebo effect. Your mind can make you feel better even when nothing physiologically changes. And here's the kicker. The procedure McMahon underwent actually carries severe risks. Medical literature documents cases where cervical spinal manipulation led to traumatic tears in the protective layer around the spinal cord, causing cerebrospinal fluid leaks and debilitating headaches. The very pain McMahon was trying to fix could have been made worse by this treatment, but McMahon doesn't care about any of that. He's out there promoting this unproven procedure like it's a miracle cure, potentially putting other desperate former players at risk. McMahon's story is a mess of bad decisions, addiction, and misplaced blame. Yes, the NFL probably hid information about brain injuries. Yes, the opioid crisis in professional sports is real and damaging. Yes, the concussion settlement had serious flaws, especially the racist race norming practice. But McMahon's role in all of this is not as a pure victim. He made choices. He played recklessly. He got addicted to painkillers. He promoted unproven medical treatments. And through it all, he acted like none of it was his responsibility. The truth is, McMahon could have been one of the greats. He had talent. He had charisma. He won a Super Bowl and could have won more if he'd taken better care of himself and made smarter choices. Instead, his career became a cautionary tale about what happens when ego, recklessness, and poor judgment collide with a dangerous sport. His legacy isn't really about football excellence. It's about tragedy, addiction, and the long, painful decline that follows when you refuse to face consequences until it's too late. If you found this video eye-opening, make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the real stories behind sports legends. Despite all his mistakes and all the chaos, there's something to be said for McMahon's willingness to speak out about brain injuries and fight for compensation for himself and other players. Even if his methods were flawed and his personal choices questionable, he did help shine a light on a problem the NFL wanted to keep hidden. Thousands of former players are suffering, and McMahon's high-profile involvement in the lawsuit forced people to pay attention. Maybe in the end, that's the one truly valuable thing Jim McMahon contributed beyond that Super Bowl ring. He made it impossible to ignore the human cost of America's favorite game.